Welcome to the B2T show, where we empower Christian patriots with truth. This is Rick, your host. Stand at the radiant ready. This was a couple days ago on June 26th, so now on June 28th we get 2 more posts, but they are meaty and it is going to be fun. So I'm going to jump to that in a second. I did want to show you this though. This is 2 truths that this Anon talks about in Vote.co. He says, 1, God did not allow Trump to survive all the unprecedented attempts to remove him from office to drop him now. Doesn't that make sense? 2, Trump will be reelected. So now we have a lot of work to do because we've got the fake news poll trying to convince everybody that Trump's in trouble, right? And the D-class is coming, and the onslaught of all this effort to kill the economy and kill the Trump rallies has worked temporarily for the deep state. But God's about ready to, I believe, reveal, expose some massive dirt, not just with the D-class, but with other things, according to Amanda Grace prophecies we've been following pretty closely. And it's going to be an amazing turn of events that'll make it an overwhelming win. But we have a person's value. Number 1, vote. Number 2, monetary value. 3, it's blank. Why is free thought ridiculed, challenged, and threatened when a person is opposed to the mainstream narrative? 2, remains fixed. Degree allowable by economic recession expansion. 1, remains a variable. 1, dependent on a controlled system of information dissemination. What happens when 90% of the media is controlled and owned by 6 corporations? What happens when those same corporations are operated and controlled by a political ideology? What happens when the news is no longer free from bias? What happens when the news is no longer reliable and independent? What happens when the news is no longer trustworthy? What happens when the news simply becomes an extension arm of a political party? Fact becomes fiction. Fiction becomes fact. When does news become propaganda? Identity creation? How does the average person who is under constant financial stress by design find time to research and discern fact versus fiction? Majority of people are prone to believe someone in power sitting behind a big brand news name? Do people, human psyche, tend to follow the majority mainstream viewpoint in fear of being isolated and or shunned? Mainstream is used for a reason. Dominant trend and opinion. If majority of people believe X, then X must be validated and true. Why do mainstream media heads with different orgs always use the same keywords and or catchphrases? Coordinated? By who? Outside entity providing instructions? Do they count on the fact that people's human psyche are more prone to believe something if heard over and over again by different trusted sources? Do echo chamber tactics provide validation / credibility to the topic / point being discussed? Threat to intellectual freedom? Who controls over of these institutions / organizations allow for the mass control of a population's viewpoint regarding a desired topic? It is a tweet, and it says, if the news is untrustworthy, corrupt, controlled, and simply an extension arm of the Democratic Party, how do you circumvent? Controlled lines of communications, propaganda. How do you circumvent all that propaganda? Well, they're doing something that they've never tried before, and that is the back channel. Okay, and this is interesting. So this spun Q, and it's at the spun Q on Twitter. That's why I suggest, again, everybody get a Twitter. Go grab my 60 top patriots above me that I used when I prepare for the show, and follow those people on Twitter. And you can also start a Parler account, which many people are doing, which is a competitor of Twitter. And based on that, just meme the heck out of things like this. Like, this is the perfect thing. You can retweet this, and this was real easy. You could also copy it with tools like In the Mac, it's Control-Shift-4. And then you can copy something like this, right? And you can post it, this picture, into Parler or Word or Facebook or Instagram. And you can, I'm going to cancel this because I've already retweeted that. And you can put it on Twitter, right? And or any of your social media and put your own information up here. Or you can just retweet or retweet with comment, right? This is important to learn how to use Twitter. We need all hands on deck, and really appreciate those of you who took the oath to be part of this digital warrior. 28th on, right? And so the first few were talking about arrests and all these things, and everybody was looking about protecting Podesta and Huma and Hillary, because they're talking about arresting them. At the same time, they had a huge operation about ready to go arrest all the House of Saud that had massive funds coming in, massive human trafficking, massive organ harvesting. House of Saud was doing a lot of the false FLAGs. So they're a big part of this whole cabal, of this triangle. George Soros, the Rothschilds, and Saud. That was the three, the plus, and the plus. So you can see nothing is random. Everything has meaning, plus. So here's Q talking about that way back in November 6th. And you see my visit to Japan, this is Donald Trump tweet. And friendship with PM Abe will yield many benefits to our country. Massive military and energy orders happening. Plus. So here he is on the 6th. At the exact same time of you can see 1707 versus 1515. So that 1707 in military time is 507. Here's 515. So very close. On the same day, both Q and Trump doing plus, right? 7 minutes later. Now, 50 minutes later, POTUS expresses his consent and approval that the House of Saud was being purged. So here's Trump saying, I have great confidence in King Salman and the Crown Prince Saudi Arabia. They know exactly what they're doing. Some of these they are harshly treating and have been milking their country for years. Other things. Decode Q11 and Q22, why we need military and why it's taking so long. And so he who has the guns wins, right? So one of the most amazing things that Gene and I have talked about is the fact that they flipped the military-industrial complex over the last decade, winning the space wars, winning the wars that are now underground in the dumbs, right? If we didn't take over the military, then the Cabal would have owned the military, and they would have won this part of this war. We know they will have some temporary wins in Revelation, but we know God wins in the end anyway. But now here at this time, before the harvest, God's going to win because His hand's on this country. And so if you're frustrated about how long this is taking, this is a good decode. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's relatively long, but the whole point is, maybe I'll go through the first part of this. So here's Q11. It says, key, military intelligence versus the FBI, CIA, NSA. No approval or congressional oversight. State secrets upheld under SC. So here you have the ability for military intelligence over this. It says United States versus Reynolds, 345 U.S. 1, 1953 is a landmark legal case in 1953 that upheld the government's claim that evidence can be withheld if it compromises national security. So really, military intelligence has a lot of power over the three-letter agencies at certain times. Following the September 11th, 2001 attacks, the privilege is increasingly used to dismiss entire court cases instead of only withholding the sensitive information from a case. Also, in 2001, George Bush issued an Executive Order 13233 extending the accessibility of the state secrets privilege to also allow former presidents, their designated representatives, or representatives designated by their families to invoke it to bar records from their tenure. What seems clear is that until a year or two ago, the judges rarely even questioned it when the government raised the state secrets claim. It was a neutron bomb. No plaintiffs left standing. But we're now seeing that judges are starting to actually look behind the government's secrecy claims and see what's really there. Here's a link to state secrets. What Q is saying is that there is no hope of getting any charges to stick to high-ranking people in civilian courts. They will simply invoke state secrets. And the whole thing will evaporate. This is how they get away with murder, money laundering, drug, and human trafficking, you name it. So it's very important to understand that civilian courts, this is why I've been telling you guys from the beginning, my very first video, I talked about the Rubik's Cube and everything, and there will be military tribunals. Mark Taylor's been saying that in his prophecies for quite some time. But this is the reason you can't do it. One of the many reasons, actually. They've corrupted the judges and corrupted the minds through propaganda of many of the people as well. So you have the jury and corrupt prosecutors, as we've seen in the Flynn case, and even the corrupt judges. Civilian courts are not going to work to take down this cabal. And so this is who is the commander-in-chief of the military? POTUS. Under what article can the president impose military intelligence take over investigations for their three-letter agencies? Article 2, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution names POTUS as commander-in-chief. The president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and the militia of the several states when called into actual service of the United States. The militia would be the National Guard. The Posse Comitatus Act, 18 U.S. Code Section 1385 forbids the use of federal troops for law enforcement with this exception. This is an important exception. Pursuant to the presidential power to quell domestic violence, federal troops are expressly exempt from the prohibitions of Posse Comitatus, the Comitatus Act, and this exemption applies equally to active duty military and federalization National Guard troops. According to Q 4521, Schiff has just introduced a bill, H.R. 7267, on 622 regarding the Posse Comitatus Act. We talked about that last time. Text and summary of the bill are not available, but it's to do away with the above exception. And they're scared to death that Trump is going to use the military to quelch what they need to continue all the way through November, all of these protests, and try to get vote by mail. Local laws, what conditions must present itself? Local laws not being enforced. Situation of national safety and security. Why is this so very important? This is why they let Antifa and BLM run amok. When the local authorities can no longer maintain order and safety, POTUS can invoke the above to bring in the military. He has stated many times that the only way is through the military because the civilian system is too corrupt. I take this to mean that even though they have infiltrated Antifa and BLM, they don't want to make arrests in civilian court because of catch and release. It should be obvious by now that the thugs are operating in cities and states where the mayors, councils, and governors are sympathetic. They also have prepaid lawyers on demand, so if they are arrested, they are almost immediately released. If the military becomes involved, there will be military tribunals. The big fish will eventually be caught, and they won't be able to claim state secrets. You just listened to the Blessed to Teach show. You're now empowered with the truth.